Okay. First, I'll introduce myself. I'm Diane Whitehead. I'm very proud to be the co-chair of the Council of Organizations, and I operate here in Washington, D.C., so have charge to get everybody in D.C. In organizations involved in UNA, which is a pretty big task, but one I'm very excited about. I just wanted to mention quickly a little bit about the COO. It was wonderful to be here in this session today, listening to all of you talking about the partnerships that you have formed locally. So we obviously do have a formal council of organizations, and we have a list of organizations that belong to that. But really we know that the heart of the COO actually lives out there with you, those of you who are actually forming these relationships in your community, doing such active, wonderful work in your chapters. So it was really thrilling to listen to all of this, and I'd love to actually get more of your partnership stories from you. I think those would be intriguing, not only for you to share with each other, but for other people to hear, to understand sort of how UNA USA works through partnerships and collaborations. And partnerships are just wonderful. Together we can do a lot more, and we can do a lot more, a lot better. So it helps us in all kinds of ways. I am also the executive director of the Association for Childhood Education International. That's an organization that works internationally but is based here in Washington, D.C. I think there are multiple ways that we can work with organizations. One is obviously what you were talking about here today, looking at who exists in your local community and embracing collaboration with those organizations. Another type of a model is to look to organizations such as the one that I operate, direct, which is involved in childhood education, and to look to organizations like us and see how we can maybe support what you're doing locally as well, even if we don't have chapters that are in your community. So there are many, many ways to form these collaborations and work effectively with organizations, and it is truly exciting. One of the jobs that I had was overseeing partnerships, and I managed about 100 partnerships with organizations, and it was one of the most exciting jobs I think that I have ever had, because we really were able to be much more effective together than we were as individual organizations. So we'd like to move ahead and just hear from a couple of other organizations that we're very proud to have representatives here of today. And before they start out, I will have them say a little bit about themselves as well, and then tell you about their organizations and ways that they think that they could collaborate with you. So we're really thrilled to have Piper Hendricks here today from Habitat for Humanity, and Samantha Myers from the One Campaign is here with us today also. So welcome to both Piper and Samantha. It's wonderful to have you here. And let's go ahead and get started. So I think we'll probably just go ahead and get started with Piper, if that's okay. And don't forget to tell a little bit about yourself. We didn't have your bio. We didn't want to read it. We thought it'd be much more friendly just to have you tell us a little bit about you. Okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Piper Hendricks. I'm with Habitat for Humanity. I'm the Director of Advocacy Communications. Can everyone hear me okay at this level? The one thing, I know you're a bit short on time, and I don't want to stand between you and lunch. Better? So the one thing I'll share about me is that I'm also a yoga instructor, and I've noticed that we've been sitting for over an hour. So I invite you to stand up with me for just a second, maybe 2 big shoulder rolls back, and I think we'll feel a bit better and a little bit more refreshed. So, great. So it is really an honor to be here with you this morning. I am based here in DC. I think a lot of us in DC are familiar with your organization, and I've really admired you from afar. So it's a pleasure to be here today. I've been with Habitat for Humanity since last fall. Hopefully you're familiar with our organization. I think a lot of people know us. We've been around for 40 years. They know us for our home building and working with low-income families. We work with them to build a home. It's a hand up and not a hand out. We are building toward 1 million homes right now, which is really exciting. We're building in around more than 70 different countries. I think a lot of people know us here in the United States, but we're actually much more international. And one quick aside, I wanted to note that Jimmy Carter, one of the misperceptions about our organization, did not start the organization. He's our most famous volunteer. And this year we'll be having our 31st annual Rosalind and Jimmy Carter Work Project in Dallas, Texas. So I want to make sure that everybody here from the Dallas-Fort Worth area is aware of that. We'll be coming and visiting you in October. But one thing about that, I mean, that the number 1 million is impressive, right? We're really excited about that. But when you look at that in the context of global need, there are 1.6 billion, with a B, people in need of better housing who are currently living in poverty housing. And so no matter how excited we are about 1 million, that doesn't start to address the 1.6 billion. And so we as an organization fairly recently started moving more into advocacy, recognizing that no matter how many homes we build, we cannot meet the need unless there are policies and systems in place to address that need and make it possible for people to live in adequate housing. So for the past few years, we've been working on the post-2015 agenda. I think there was a comment earlier about starting with the top, go to the chair of the department rather than to the professors. And that's our approach as well with this, wanting to go to the top with a global agenda. And that's something that I think this crowd appreciates much more than many in the United States. There's different perceptions of the UN, and that's something that we're hoping people, our affiliates specifically, will start to appreciate more that role of the international agenda. We have about 1,500 affiliates in the United States. I'm not sure if any of you are partnering with them yet, but I see this particular issue, getting housing in the post-2015 agenda, to be a wonderful realm of potential collaboration with our organizations. For those of you who are following it, you're probably familiar that the zero draft from the Open Working Group included a goal for sustainable cities and human settlements. And we are really excited about that because that prioritizes housing. There's a risk, however, of folding in, there's different terms that have been used, mainstreaming some of these goals and really taking away from the focus of housing. And that's something that we at Habitat really do not want to see happen, because for all the different priorities, whether you're looking at gender, whether you're looking at education, at health issues, all of it ties in some way to housing. And again, I kind of feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, but we know that in 2050, with a projected number of 70% of the population living in cities, you just cannot underscore enough the importance of having that focus on cities. So just as of last Friday, you guys are actually hearing this before our affiliates are, we started both a Change.org petition and an Avaaz petition. Change.org is a platform that people are more familiar with here in the United States, and so we've joined with the coalition to use that to reach out to the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Elizabeth Cousins. And then Avaaz seems to be a bit more familiar on the international stage, so we're using Avaaz to focus on the UN, specifically the Open Working Group and the General Assembly. And we welcome collaboration on this. I'm still learning a bit about the platform. I'd love to have all the logos up there, list everyone in the coalition. Right now it's just sponsored by the Coalition for Sustainable Cities and Human Settlements, and we're wanting to build that out. But I invite you to use this petition. It's not something that we gather any particular data, meaning it's not sponsored. We're not going to get the email addresses and be messaging people. This is just purely for numbers and awareness raising. I'd be happy to share more information about that after the session. I've got my card. I've also left some of our shelter reports outside here on your right, my left. We have issued shelter reports since 2008. They usually alternate between domestic and international issues. 2014 focuses on microfinance, but then I also, just because there's a bunch out there that I thought might be of interest, I included some on low-income housing in the United States, and then some also on land tenure, which is an advocacy campaign that we'll be launching later this year. So yeah, I think that you're being here, and as you meet with people on the Hill, really emphasizing that the United States has a role to play in this post-2015 agenda, and supporting making housing a priority in that, and then also using the petitions at your local level. are wonderful ways to partner with Habitat. I'd also love to see, like I mentioned earlier, working with the affiliates at that local level to develop an understanding of just how the international agenda is applicable, right down to the very, smallest unit you can possibly think of. There's just a lot of really neat room for collaboration. So happy to take any questions later, and thank you again for having me.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? No? Is that better? Okay, kind of stopped a little bit. As you mentioned, my name is Samantha. I work for the One Campaign. I work as a field manager in the Midwest region. I know I met a couple of people who are based in the Midwest, which is great, and I'll touch a little bit about how we can partner. So as a field manager, a little bit of background about myself. I got involved in the One Campaign as a student. So I'd be happy to discuss any student collaboration or ideas with you all. We have a really great student program within One. And I was a campus leader for 3 years at Michigan State, and then moved to DC when I graduated and started working at headquarters. So I work as a field manager in the Midwest region, as I mentioned, working with our volunteer leaders and day-to-day basis, working with the people who really guide the organizing in congressional districts. So we organize based on congressional districts, and our organizers are kind of an extension of our field staff. We have 8 field staff all around the country, and the field staff work to organize the congressional district leaders, who then go out and organize their own volunteers. So kind of like a web structure of organizing, and are really involved in 3 main buckets of organizing. We have sort of the public awareness piece, public education, and then advocacy and events, which I know you all are really involved in. And then third is meetings, that kind of direct advocacy piece. And we hold a Hill Day in DC called the Power Summit, where people meet with their elected leaders and things like that. So kind of those 3 buckets we're really involved in. So as I mentioned, the events are kind of the main sort of piece that we deal with on a local basis. Our CDLs, congressional district leaders, plan events, sort of on a smaller basis of what you guys are involved in. It seems like you are really great at organizing those sort of bigger events. We do, since the One Campaign, we don't fundraise, we just are involved in making sure that elected leaders support programs that fight poverty in sub-Saharan Africa, which I realize I didn't mention before. But so everything we do, we don't endorse candidates. We do policy, not politics. So our CDLs are really engaging their political leaders to ensure that they go and vote for programs that help fight poverty in sub-Saharan Africa. And we had a huge win a couple of months ago. We really saw, called the Electrify Africa Act. We saw that act through its lifetime. So we were involved in writing the legislation, sort of in the headquarters basis. And then our CDLs held events, got those advocacy actions in, calls and letters to the members of Congress, held hundreds of meetings, about 500 meetings, locally and in DC to really see the Electrify Africa Act through passage in the House. It passed through the House a couple of months ago, which is great. So a huge testament to all the great work that our CDLs and volunteers are doing locally. And I'm sure some volunteers partnered with UNA folks around the country, and really a huge testament to the power of partnerships and the power of volunteers, and all the advocacy actions that everyone got in, thousands of letters and thousands of phone calls and things like that. So I'd be happy to talk. I work in the Midwest region, as I mentioned, but if anyone is interested in getting involved with One and partnering on the local level, I'd be happy to set anyone up with a One CDL or staff member around the country. Looking forward to working in Iowa with the woman I was sitting with earlier. So always just kind of keeping eyes and ears peeled for people to partner with. And yeah, kind of cut it there in case anyone has questions. But thank you all for all the work that you do locally. I know I'm sort of biased, but I think volunteers are really the backbone of one and of the advocacy movement. And yeah, so feel free to ask any questions you like. Yeah.
I've been active in one for what, just in the 10th anniversary.
Great, yeah.
My sister works for Milano.
Great.
As marketing director. Sorry, usually I have a loud enough voice. I have 4 kids that usually hear me. Anyway, we moved from Orange County to Palm Springs
Yeah.
for business, and I'm having a hard time finding an area representative or like what you were talking about. My kids go to Jesuit school, and part of their curriculum is, community service, and so they've been doing it for years, and I really think that this is a good thing for them to get involved with. But in that area, I'm having a hard time finding somebody that I can contact.
Sure.
That maybe we can start, I don't know if you call them chapters, I don't know, can we start our own? What's the process with that? And then in closing, we also have an MUN program
Yeah.
on the campus. So it would be great to partner those two things because, like you say, you advocate policy. And, like the energy campaign that you just did, our congressman voted for it.
Great.
But that was very effective, and you did a lot of Facebooking and tweeting, and, that's all that generation. So it would be a really great pairing for our UNA chapter, and also WEN. So can you help me out there?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's part of Riverside County, just to let you know.
Okay, do you know which congressional district you're in by
We're
chance?
36.
Okay, so I don't know off the top of my head about Florida, but I do know that Florida is one of our most developed states in the country. We have some great congressional district leaders in Florida who I'd be happy to set you up with.
Not Palm Beach, Palm Springs in California.
Oh, California. Well, again, California is really highly developed. So I'll be happy to hook you up with a CDL in the region. But if we don't have a CDL, I'll hook you up with my counterpart in California and hopefully get something off the ground. I would imagine there's someone to partner with there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you.
So I think we're actually short on time, so everyone would be encouraging to talk with both Piper and Samantha during lunch if they can stay around. Hand it over to Diane to wrap things up.
Okay, so we're just going to wrap up our session. It was really exciting. So thanks to Barry and Mr. Nelda Reed, who I didn't get Mr. Nelda Reed's name. There we go. Thank you. And to Paula for being here to talk about what the chapters were doing specifically, and then to Piper and Samantha as well. Some really, really exciting things are happening with Habitat for Humanity, who I actually have partnered with before in another life, and the One Campaign, which is doing wonderful, wonderful work that we probably many of us are aware of. So this concept of sort of partnering, really bringing in organizations, institutions, universities to work with us is truly, truly exciting to me, and really is the work of what we think of as the Council of Organizations for UNA USA. This is where it is working. This is where we're taking action and coming together to really make some meaningful change in communities. So thank you so much. Again, I'm Diane Whitehead. If you have any questions about the Council of Organizations, please come to either me or Aaron Etcher, who is my council co-chair, waving his hand right there. We'd be happy to answer questions for you. And I am also with the Association of Childhood Education International. So if you want to talk about international issues in education, I'd be happy to do that with you as well. So thank you so much, appreciate it, and we're moving on.